Ms Tineke Strik, welcome to our Parliamentary Assembly Mediabox. On the occasion of Parliamentary Assembly plenary session, this week there was an urgent debate on the situation of refugees and migrants under the Turkey agreement. And you were the rapporteur on that report. So what are your first outcomes from that discussions? Because we know that there are lots of critics on the agreement which is signed between Turkey and EU.
Yeah, well, the resolution which has been adopted also criticizes a lot of elements of the EU-Turkey agreement. The main element of criticism actually is that all refugees who arrive now at the European Union territory in Greece are returned back to Turkey. And we are concerned about the human rights of these refugees because the procedure is very short in Greece, and we know that there are a lot of deficiencies in these asylum procedures. There are not enough officials, there are not enough lawyers, there are not enough judges, and there's not enough time. So we are very concerned that refugees do not get a proper asylum procedure. And it's needed that they have this because it really has to be assessed if Turkey is a safe third country for them. As we know that Turkey is already hosting 3 million refugees. That's huge, that's much more than the EU does or the Council of Europe, the other member states of the Council of Europe do. And we are quite worried what will happen if all refugees are sent back. So Turkey has to cope with hosting them all on its own. And we say that we'd better take a fair share of these refugees by inviting a substantial number of these refugees coming to the EU so that we all share the responsibility for the refugees. And that can mean that they really have a possibility to get protection, to be integrated, and that their human rights are not violated.
And what about the role of the Council of Europe member states? Because there are much more members than the EU.
Yes.
So what is the position of the Council of Europe from that side? Because we know that it's a bit difficult to have a consensus on the treatment of the refugee crisis, to sharing the responsibilities and the sharing the refugees as a person, let's say. Yeah. So what do you think about that?
Of course, all member states have different positions on that, but I was very encouraged by the fact that there was a majority in the Parliamentary Assembly, so all the parliamentarians of all these member states, who say we have to show solidarity with other countries and also with the refugees. Because if we leave hosting all these refugees because of the Syrian war alone, we have already 12 million refugees. If we leave that to only 3 countries, then it will mean a threat for these countries. Think of Lebanon, Jordan, small, fragile countries. And it will also mean that the refugees do not get access to the labor market, the children cannot go to school. So we can only give a real good treatment to the refugees if we share this responsibility. And maybe the governments are not always willing, but the position was very firm in the Assembly. This is the only solution that we have. Take a common approach.
And you have also another report, again on the refugees and migrants, which is discussed in the Parliamentary Assembly, human rights of the refugees and migrants, especially in particularly the situation in the Western Balkans.
Yes.
So what would you like to say about that report, and maybe more concretely your recommendations on that point to the member states?
Well, it's sort of outdated. When I did the visit, all the refugees were still able to pass through the Balkan countries in order to arrive in the northern European member states. Since February, this border has been completely closed at the Fyrom border, so the border between Greece and Fyrom. And therefore now 50,000 refugees are stuck in Greece without having access to an asylum procedure. Many of them are family members of refugees who already live in the northern member states. So we say that member states should give generous family unification procedures to those people so that they can travel legally and safely to their family members in the north. And we say don't leave Greece alone with this. I mean, people are stuck now in Greece, which has already a lot of difficulties. And the promise that was made by the member states of the Union to distribute all the refugees who stay there has not been complied with yet. So we also say, please start immediately with distributing these asylum seekers and refugees so that we share this responsibility for the refugees and make sure that people are not stuck in a kind of no man's land without any rights.
So maybe it's important to note that even we call it like a refugee crisis, there is also very important lack of policies and implementation of the, for example, refugee family reunification procedures, and the asylum system procedures also need to maybe
exactly. I think it's I often call it a management crisis instead of a refugee crisis. And as one of the speakers from Germany said yesterday, we can't do much more than we do now. We have 500 million only in the EU, but a lot more in the whole Council of Europe. So we can host more refugees if we really want. So the political will is determining in this regard.
Thank you for your contributions.
Thank you.
Thank you.